Cool. So right off the bat, in today's agenda, we will be talking about why report developers should build interactive reports. What tools should report developer use to build these interactive reports on? And these tools, we will mainly focus on buttons, filters, bookmark, selections, interactions, custom decks, and at the end, we will present a quick demo on what an interactive report looks like. So without further ado, let's get started. Awesome.
Mark, have we started the recording?
We have.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're
Cool.
welcome.
So the question is, why should report developers spend more time building interactive reports? Yes, so building an interactive reports, it definitely requires a little bit more attention to the development phase of the project. You will spend a lot of time working things out. But however, after you finish building it, it can be very, very rewarding. So I list out some of the key points on why people should build an interactive reports instead of just a basic normal reports. So the number one is that the ability focus on core capabilities. So let's say that interactive reporting gives more power to end users, which requires less customizations for developers. And because of this, developers can focus on correcting problem and improving other aspects of the business. So for a quick example, you need to, let's say that an report developer needs to present an overview data of both US and New Zealand. Instead of building two different tabs, you can combine both required visualization in one tab and can have a button switching back and forth. So that way you can spend a lot of time. It saves you a lot of time from rebuilding another identical tab, but focusing on different data. Number two is agility. So interactive reporting not only saves time for developers, but it also saves time for the end users and customers by eliminating the needs to wait for requests. So for example, let's say that we can use Power BI cross-filtering system to present any cross-filtering data from the original data source and satisfy the client's requirements. So very, very useful. The third one is data discovery in the user's hand, which interactive reporting capabilities are optimized on both mobile and the web. So end users can view and analyze data whenever and wherever they need to do. Number four is collaboration, which users can reuse and share components of reports for better collaborations among teams. And Power BI service is very known for collaborations that you can take a big advantage of this tool to create something big for you and your colleague or you and your organizations. And the next one is aesthetic pleasing. It's fun to interact. So let's all admit it. You know, everyone loves a fancy report. No one really likes a plain, boring report that shows only a couple visualizations, a couple KPIs on it, and thankfully, Power BI can give us the capabilities to be flexible and show off a little amongst our peers and the end users. And lastly, the focus on the key information. So in Power BI, you can set different settings on your interactive reports to portray most important items on your report. So the end users can have an easier time finding that information and they don't have to go through all the hassles. They don't have to go through different tabs just to find the right information. It could be just a single button, a simple button. You click on it, it will bring you to the information. So ultimately, I think in another way is that I see a lot of clients or a lot of report developers have been building reports and they have creating unnecessary tabs just for the same layouts but just different data sets. You don't actually have to do that. Ultimately you can actually put everything together. If they're still in the same style, you can put everything together in just one tab by creating these awesome buttons and bookmarks to make sure that everything is working smoothly and everything working more dynamically, which is very, very cool. So what are some common tools that are used for interaction report development? Surprisingly, we do not need any third-party software to build an interactive report. All we need is Power BI, and that's it. Power BI has done a great job on providing us the necessary tools, which are very similar to PowerPoint. Um, if you are fluent with PowerPoint, you will have a strong concept and grasp on the following tools. In Power BI, we typically use buttons, we typically use filters, bookmark, selections, interactions. Sometimes we use custom DAX to be more flexible on things. And we also use visualization customizations to make sure that we are getting the right requirements and the right setup. Typically in Power BI, I know that Power BI is still relatively new on the market. It has been releasing a lot of different updates. But however, sometimes you do need to use a little bit of visualization illusions to get what you're trying to do. So I know there are a lot of things on this list, but as we dive deeper on these different tools, we will realize that these tools are not hard to use at all. They carry out the basic understanding, and they are just what we need to. Basically, they are all we need for to enhance our report development skills, which is great. Cool. So let's start off with the first tool, which is buttons. Um, for me, I love buttons, especially on the PowerPoint. I remember back then, any presentation I would always create a couple buttons just to show off a little bit. But just similar to PowerPoint, in Power BI, buttons is also it's basically the same concept. The concept is very simple. You can create different buttons and link them to different functions on a page view. So in the current Power BI meta, Power BI offers 8 different default buttons with different unique actions. Which on showing the picture, these functions are left and right arrow, which allow users to go back and forth to the report tab. The reset button, which allows users to reset their entire report back to the default settings or default view, I would say. Back basically it's a back button that allows users to go back to the previous tab that they have been viewed. Information, which provides a custom pop-up for users to customize and putting different information on there. Help is basically a Power BI help button. And Q&A is a button where it's actually really cool. It's Power BI created this AI system that allows users to type in certain questions in the question box, and it will portray certain answers or give you certain answers based off your questions and based off your data, which is very awesome. And at the end, the next one is bookmark, which I will explain a little bit more in the next slides. And lastly, it's a blank button. Blank button is very simple, but basically the idea is that blank buttons allow users to create the most vanilla buttons on there. They can type in whatever words they want. They can type in whatever, they can set up whatever color they want. Basically, it's a customizations on the Power BI. So to create a button in Power BI Desktop, on the insert ribbon on the top, select buttons and a drop-down menu will appear, just showing the picture, and where you can select whatever button that you need and from the collection of the option. And you can also create a button on the Power BI service, which is really cool. So to create a button in the Power BI service, you can open the reports in Edit View, select buttons in the top menu bar, and the drop-down menu will appear. And from that section, you can also select whatever collection options that's shown above. Whether you create the buttons in Power BI Desktop or the Power BI service, the rest of the process is the same. When you select the button on the report canvas, the visualization panel will allow you to customize whatever buttons to fit your best requirements. What is the cool thing about buttons is that you can actually set different colors on different states. There's currently 3 states. There's a hover state where when your cursor hovers on a button, it will go through a certain color. When you click on it, it will go through another color. And then after you click on it, it will go through another color. So you can select 3 different states and you can choose the best color and the best need for your buttons. Cool. Awesome. So the second tool that we're going to talk about is filters. So the filters in Power BI provide the capability to highlight key areas of the reports to the end users. It also depends on their requirements. But in Power BI, there are three main filtering techniques. The first one is cross-filtering. Cross-filtering in Power BI provides interactivity amongst visuals on the page. Visuals response based on the user selections from another visuals. Closely related is cross-highlighting, which is available for a subset of visuals, such as, for example, let's say that bar or column charts or even pie charts. But the idea here is that very simply, you click on a certain data field in a visualization, it will cross-filter into another visualization, unless you want to cancel out that interaction, which I will be talking about it in the next coming slide. The next filtering system is the filter panel. But basically, the filter panel is either expanded, collapsed, or even hidden. When you can adjust the width of the filter panel, and its location is not customizable. It will always appear on the right side of the report canvas. So showing the picture, when you have a report canvas, the filter panel will always be on the right side of your report. But basically, Power BI offers ability to change filter panel formatting as a whole and for individual filters. So inside the filter panel, there are three different filter options. There's the there's the page level filter options, there's the report level filter options, and there's the visual level filter options. Again, please keep in mind that when you put certain fields into, well, when you're trying to filter these things out, be sure that you are applying you're putting the field in the right filter sections. Because past experience, I noticed that a lot of clients saying that why I'm getting my data modeling is correct, everything is correct, but however, I realized that my data somehow seem to be filtered, even though that there's no filter sections on that specific page. It probably could be, and I realized that it could be, filters on the whole entire report instead of filter on that specific tab. Awesome. And then lastly, while Slicer provides similar filtering result as cross-filtering or the visualization panel, slicers are basically visualizations. Consequently, choosing to use Slicer means you're adding portion of the page itself to additional visuals. So therefore that you must factor Slicer into visualizations of your report canvas. I love using Slicer as to create an interactive report. I feel like Slicer provides the necessary user experience steps for a lot of end users. A lot of users tend to have trouble or they have to go to the filter panel to select certain fields, where in reality, the report developer can create different slicer and put it on the report. It could be put in as a navigation bar, could be put on anywhere on the report. And what users have to do is that they can just select that slicer and they can select whatever field in order to apply cross-filtering. I think slicers it's very beneficial to, especially to the user experience, because they eliminate a lot of extra user steps, which is not necessarily cool. So the next one we're going to talk about is bookmarks. So bookmarks in Power BI allow developers to capture the current configured view of the report page, which includes filtering and the state of visualizations. This means that you can select the bookmark and see the page with the state that you have saved as. Please keep in mind that bookmark is not a screenshot, but rather it will be saved as an interactive Power BI report page with the current state saved as it is. So basically what that means is that whatever settings that you have on your report, or whatever view that you have on your report, you can technically save it as bookmark. And then basically the idea here is that you can link that bookmark, link the button to that bookmark. And when you press that button, it will show the current view that you have saved as the bookmark. the bookmark is another useful tool that I use often, and the bookmark selection is located under the View tab on the Power BI desktop, and then it's under the bookmark section. So very easy to navigate, very useful to use. Cool. The next tool that I'm going to quickly talk about is selections. Selection is very useful in sort of way because it's amazing feature specifically designed for complex Power BI reports with many different visualizations, or rather many different overlapping objects. What selection does is that it lists all of the visualizations parts in the current report page and allows you to hide or to show these counterparts as you prefer. So as you can see in the image, when we open up the selection panel, you can see all of these objects that's currently used in the Power BI report page on the specific report page. As you can see, it could be just headers, it could be just objects, it could be visualizations, it could be anything, but anything that's on the report page, it will show up as under the selection. And on the right, as you can see, you get to see all of these eyeballs where you can technically turn them on and off. When you turn them off, basically you're telling Power BI that saying that you want to hide that specific objects. And then if you want them to turn it back on, you can just click them again, and then we'll review back on. So, again, we can combine this feature with bookmark panel feature. So for every bookmark in a bookmark panel, Power BI provides one selection panel. Sometimes when we perform slideshows to the client with Power BI desktop, we can actually hide the unnecessary visuals with just a single click of button to focus on specific visualizations. So a quick example that is that, let's say that if you want to change KPIs, let's say that you have a KPI of certain data, but you want to turn that KPI into something else, we can technically use this function right here with a single click of button to toggle on and off between two visualizations, which is extremely awesome. Cool. And then lastly, what we have here is interactions. So by default, selecting a data point in one visualizations on a report page will cross-filter or cross-highlight the other visualization on the page. Exactly how the visuals on page interact is set by the report designer. Designer have the options, have the capability to turn on the visual visual interactions on and off, and to change the default cross filtering, highlighting, and drilling behaviors. One of the key things that one of the common scenario that I experienced with this is that sometimes that, let's say that there's a couple visualizations on the report. What you want to do is that you want one report to be the overview KPI. You don't want anything to do with it. You don't want anything to change. Think of it as like we're looking at a world set, and then you want the one visualization to rather be just the whole entire world. And then rather than clicking on certain countries, you don't want that visualizations to get filtered out to whatever countries that you have selected. You just want it to be the whole world or the whole population visualizations. You can technically use interactions, and you can actually cancel the interaction between different visualization to visualization to a point that when you click on something, it will not affect the other visualizations. Awesome. So that's the main tools that I have that I mainly use to build out an interactive report. What I like to do is that I would like to quickly show you one of the products that I have commonly have designed previously for DesignMind, and then I just kind of show you what are my thought process and what I like to do with every report design building. Awesome. So this is what I have right here. So to give you guys a little bit of history, so back then, I have designed a report for DesignMind based on using the COVID data back then. We have pulled out COVID data from the Johns Hopkins data. Currently, the data is a little bit outdated. However, we are using this data for dummy purposes. So when I'm personally building a report, what I like to do is that I would like to separate the report into two sections. The first section is a navigation bar, and the second section is basically where the main report page comes in. So as you can see on the report right here, that I have separate these two sections right here, as you can see. The left section, what I like to do is it's called a navigation bar. What I like to do is that I like to put in all of these buttons, all of these slicers, all of these reset buttons. I like to put logos on there. I like to put a lot of different things, a lot of useful link on there, just to show that whenever a user is performing a user experience or user step, they can technically go back to the navigation bar to finish that step. So this navigation bar, what I like to do, it can based on your own aesthetic, it can based on your own requirements, it can be all over the place. For example, it could be on the left of the report, it could be on the top of the report as like a top navigation bar, it could be on the right of the report, it could even be on the bottom of the report. It really depends on personal preference or requirements. For over here, what I like to do is that I like to put it on the left side of the report, or sometimes I like to put it on the top. These two positions are the main places that I like to do. And after the navigation bar is set, I often think about what visualization do I want to put on my report. I know that I have limited space because I've been using the navigation bar. I have limited space because all of these things are kind of fitted in. What is the best suitable visualizations I should put on there? Um, the best thing about building an interactive report is that the options are actually limitless. It looks like that you don't have enough space because the navigation bar is built, but in reality, what you can do is that you can actually create buttons, and you can actually set these buttons to specific bookmarks. So watch this. Look at this. So on the navigation bar on the left, I have three buttons. So one of the button I have these top two buttons. What I have is basically demonstrating the idea that button could be used as a HTML link opener. So when I open this, as you can see, it opened up a specific Internet Explorer HTML page with the COVID-19 self-assessment. The best thing about this button right here is that it allows you to open up whatever reports or whatever things that you want the user to click on to look at. So it could be anything. It could be a report link, it could be an internet link, it could be any it could even be a documentation link. The idea here is that we're trying to produce this report, and we're trying to push it as a product instead of just like a boring 2D visual, like a report page where it kind of just shows off the data. But the idea here is that we are pushing this as an app. We're kind of pushing this forward. We want the user to interact. We want the user to do many different things to overpass the flexibility of Power BI. And the best thing about bookmark and buttons is that when I click this button right here, as you can see, it changes these buttons right here. It changes these visualizations right here. That's the cool thing about bookmarks and buttons and selection is that, yeah, even though we took some of the space from the navigation bar, we can technically set different bookmarks and set up different buttons to have different overview of the report. And then these reports can be anything. Like, for example, if I click a single button, all of these visualization will disappear and the new visualization will appear. That's the beauty of bookmarks. It's very cool. It's very dynamic, and it definitely bypasses the inflexibility that we're currently experiencing.
Chennie,
Other than that, yeah.
Just a quick comment for this card information. When you flip the views of the KPIs on top or the visuals on top, can you just show where you set the bookmark, like on the button, like the on and off, and the bookmark, because I think we've talked a lot about bookmarks and buttons, but like where do you configure that for people that may be interested in doing this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you design things like this, you can go to the View tab on the top of your Power BI ribbon, and then you see here as the selection that what we have been talking about previously. So when you click on the selection, and then you will also notice that bookmarks also exist in there. So when we click on bookmark and selections, these two pop-ups will appear on the left. So like we discussed on selection panel give us the ability to overlook whatever objects that's on the current report page. So as you can see that, just as you can see that we have a lot of different objects on this report itself, on this tab report on itself. And just to show you how I did this is actually using it's a clever illusion technique. But basically the idea here is that if you drag this down a little bit, or if you hide this, there is another visualization underneath. So basically the KPI was overlapping the other KPI visualizations. So let's say, for example, if we turn this back on, as you can see, this one will reappear. And then, for example, let's say that like if to just for demonstration purposes on the selection panel that we have this section as viewable, and then this section as well as viewable. Technically, what we can do is that we can close this one, and then we can put this on the top. We can overlap this, and then we can activate this. And then what we can do is that we can add a bookmark on the top right here in the bookmark section. Again, the bookmark section appears in the view ribbon under the bookmark tool. And then we can add a bookmark. And then what are we going to call this? We're going to call this total recovered KPI. And after that, when you're done, you can actually create buttons to insert these KPIs. So for example, what we can do is that we can go to the insert ribbon, and then as you can see, there's a button option. What we're gonna do is we're gonna click on the button options, and then we're gonna hit the blank button. Awesome. And then as you can see, when we choose the blank buttons, we can actually customize this button by going to the visualization panel on the right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on the visualization panel, and then we're gonna insert some text. So for this one, for the quick demonstration purposes, we're gonna call it KPI button. And then we're just gonna make this a little bit bigger. And then we're gonna use this font right here. And then what I also like to do is that I like to customize different visualizations, and just to make sure things are looking a little more everything looks a little bit more aesthetic, or everything looks a little bit more fun. What I like to do is that I like to go to fill, which we're trying to change the color of this. One thing that I don't like is the outline. So what I'm gonna do, I'm actually gonna toggle off the outline, and then we're gonna go to fill, we're gonna activate it. And then, like I previously discussed, for button system, there's three different options. One option is hover, one option is press, and one of them is disable. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna quickly change on hover, and then we're gonna make this, let's say we're gonna make this into dark blue. And then after that, what we're gonna do is that when we're pressing this button, I want this button to look light blue. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna change press, and then we're gonna change this into light blue. And then let's say that originally I want this button to be orange. What we can do right here is that we're gonna go back to default state, and then we're gonna change this to orange. So as you can see, it's orange right here, and then we're gonna change the transparency a little bit to 0, just so that things are more noticeable. Awesome. So as you can see, when we hover this, it changes to a different color. When you press on this, it go to a different, it will appear to another color. The reason why this button does not work is because we actually have a link the bookmark to that button. So how do we link that bookmark to that button? So we're gonna minimize the button text. And then again, we need to press on the button to make sure that we're bringing up the visualization panel. And then on the bottom, what we're gonna do is we're gonna press the action button, the action bar right here, and we're just gonna turn it on. And then what we're gonna do is that we're gonna click on the down arrow. And as you can see, there's different actions for a button can do. So these actions can be bookmark, these actions can be drill through, it can be page navigation, it could be Q&A, or it can be a web URL. So in previously, what I have been talking about the COVID test, I've been using web URL, but again, you can do page navigations or you can even do bookmark. So in this case, we're gonna do bookmark. And as you can see, we have all of these bookmarks that we have added previously. And remember, we created a total recovery KPI. We're gonna use exactly that. Awesome. So after that is done, when we go back to a specific view, we're gonna click on the KPI button. It's gonna change different things. And notice how these buttons, this color, this button right here also changes. That's because that bookmark save the default screen that what you have on Power BI. So for example, when I save the bookmark right here, this button right here was orange. If it was blue and I add it to a bookmark, and when I press on the bookmark, it's going to become blue. So please keep in mind that that bookmark save the current state of your report and the current settings. And then also, just a quick tip that notice how the filter panel is closed. When you have this filter panel open and you save the bookmark, again, you save the bookmark as the current state, when you link that bookmark to a specific button and when you click on that button, this filter panel will always be open as default, just because it's open when we save the bookmark. So please keep in mind that this is actually a very important step, because once you change that, you cannot go back and re-change or edit the bookmark. So I noticed that back then, there in some past of my experience, a lot of report developers have designed a lot of bookmarks and they have set it a lot of buttons, and then they have linked it to everything. Everything's great, everything is perfect. However, they realize every time they open certain buttons, the filter panel would appear. And this is, again, once you made the changes, once you linked everything, you cannot go back. You cannot edit the bookmark anymore. So keep in mind that if you want this filter panel to disappear, when you click on the bookmark, you have to make it disappear by default. Awesome.
Thank you, Chennie. And I think here what I wanted people to be able to see is, like, for the buttons to really become interactive, you need to use the selections, you need to use the bookmark, and then once you have the view, that's where you can add the button. But it's like all these three features combined together that creates the interactive reports. And
Correct.
it's a lot of information. So thank God we're recording, and people can go back on and watch the video as need be.
Correct. Just to make sure, that's a great point, Christian. Just to make sure that everything, to summarize all of the concept that we talk about, I would like to call this an interactive report combos. But basically, that we in the first step, that we make sure that we have the right selections, the right filters, and the right interactions. We set them as bookmarks, and then after bookmark appears, we push them into buttons, and then we can put the buttons on the reports, and that's just how the whole entire combo works. Just once you master this combo right here, making an interactive report is extremely easy. It's extremely fun. And again, if you guys are very familiar with PowerPoints, or if you just do a lot of buttons in general, you will realize that this information right here is a lot of information. However, it's very simple. You just have to follow specific rules and guidelines, and you will have great results. Awesome. Just to, before ending things, I would just like to quickly demonstrate some of the things that I like to use to improve the aesthetics, to improve the user functions. One thing that I really like to do is that this is also using the bookmark system, that I like to have a little filter panel designed for the users. The filter panel is designed for the users to basically giving them the best opportunity of using different filters. So they don't have to go to the filter panels. They don't have to go here. They don't have to open it. Don't have to, select whatever filter things they need, and the report gets filtered. What they can do right here is that they can actually select different slicers. So for example, let's say that I want to select to, like, for example, country, and then I would like to select Australia. And then as you can see, this whole entire report is filtered out. And one thing that I like to do, which I don't think is necessary, but I do think is a really nice touch, I think it definitely improves aesthetic a little bit, is that I always like to have a reset button right here. I know that it could be a reset symbol. I know that in Power BI service, there's already kind of like a reset options already. Again, this is purely for aesthetic. I just think this is a nice touch. It's just because that, when users are selecting certain slicers, they don't have to go somewhere to just reset it. They can just simply click on the reset button to make sure everything is resetted as shown. So I definitely think that this is one of the also very interesting functions to have. It's very interesting things to do. Another thing that I like to do is that I like to use custom DAX to create different concatenations of different functions and shown on the report. So on the bottom right here, as you can see, there is like this little filter bar for filter visualizations that I've created. So the idea of this is that when the report gets really big, when the report gets extremely large to a point that there's a lot of slicers, there's a lot of filters happening in that filter panel, when a users is selecting certain filters, they don't really know. Well, they could technically go to the filter section to see whatever filters they have applied, but I want them to know that what filters are they applied when looking at this report. So the idea here is that I actually created a simple DAX formula that allows users to, whatever filters that they have selected, it shows up as a concatenation, and it will show up on the bottom to tell the users which filters they have selected. So quick demonstration that if you go to all, and then if you go to Australia, see on the bottom, you can actually tell the users that you have that the filters that you have selected is that the country and region is Australia. And again, it's everything is designed by DAX, which is amazing. DAX is just not the tool that you can just design for KPIs, for different functions, or even calculate functions or so on. It could be manipulated and could be changed like this. Just to kind of quickly demonstrate this function, what this function does is that if you are familiar with DAX, that you'll probably notice that the whole logic here is that if this region column is filtered, then concatenate between the country region, which I like to put like a text, like a simple text string, just to kind of indicate people that which filters I have selected. And then I concatenate the distinct location of that table has been selected. So the idea here is that when a user selects certain things, it looks out the distinct record and it concatenate between both the string data and also your table data. So and together in the bottom, what you can do that you have the result as this. And then again, just a quick show to show you, it changes everything. It's really cool. And then you can have different things on there. So you can also have attributes, and then it will just stack up. The idea here is that you can create infinite amount of these kind of DAX, and then whatever filters that you have on there, it can just pile up and up, and then it will show you on the bottom, which is I think is a very neat trick, very neat thing to do. But otherwise, another DAX thing that I use is that sometimes the header sometimes the header for visualization doesn't provide the right amount of space. This is a preferencely like a static thing, is a personal preference thing. But the idea here is that is you can actually create DAGs and put them under sorry, you can create different objects and then put single text in those objects to create titles for reports. Because the idea here is that back then when I was developing reports, I'm just quickly showing for demonstration purposes that originally when you have a title on here, as you can see, the title is rather, yeah, you can customize these titles, but there's just certain options that you can do. Sometimes it could be the spacing, sometimes it could be everything. But the idea here that it's that you can actually it's all about illusion. It's all about visual illusion. Is that you can actually use your unique object, put a word in it, and put a specific padding to it. Because once you have this object, you can actually set whatever paddings that you want. I know that padding is a topic that hasn't been touched on in Power BI, and I'm definitely looking forward to in the future that they will add the padding options or even the spacing options for visualizations for better customizations. But right now, this is just a loophole that it'll allow users to create customized padding to different visualizations, and then just to make sure that everything is aesthetic. Again, this is not required as a personal preference. Awesome, and that's pretty much what I have for today. I hope you all learned something regarding to visualizations, report building. But again, this is what I like to do when it comes to report development. I like to get it's all about illusions for me. So you have to sometimes you have to think a little bit deeper to create the best aesthetic or best report outcomes. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Chennie. Actually, just a comment on the bookmarks, just to make sure people are warned, is, and maybe you can show it, is like the bookmark, as you mentioned, is, remembering all the settings of your report, which means you can build all the report. But let's say if later on you decide to change a requirement or change a visual, that's when you would have to go back to all the bookmarks that you have and hit update. So maybe you can just demonstrate that really quick in the couple of minutes before the 8 o'clock, and we can open the Q&A. But I think showing how to update a bookmark after you've made a change in a report will be very valuable for people to understand that if they use these techniques, there is some overhead in maintenance when you want to change something, but there is a great reward for that with the visuals and the interactions that you can have.
Right. So if I'm not mistaken, when you create a bookmark, you can, and then let's say that you want to change whatever that bookmark, or you want to up that bookmark, there's actually no edit options available yet. However, what you can do is that when let's say that we clicked on the total recover KPI bookmark, and as you can see that there's different settings that we have applied. Technically, in a way, you can actually update these visualizations. Let's say that if I want to turn off everything, and then in order to update that bookmark, you have to create a new bookmark, which is very simple to do. All you have to do is just press add, and then you can name it. For example, in this demonstration purposes, it could be total recovered KPI, and then it could be a little bit updated. And then, but please do remember that when you update this and then you want to change, for example, buttons, you have to make sure that you go back to the buttons. You have to select the updated version of your bookmark. Currently, Power BI does not have the option that allow you to just edit bookmarks. But I'm excited for upcoming changes. To see what they can do with bookmarks, or even take the bookmark to a further step. But what I usually my usually workflow regarding to bookmark is that if I want to update it, I definitely update it. I create a new one, and then I delete the old one, and then I change the button just to make sure that I don't get confused with anything. I definitely recommend deleting the old previous bookmark, just because that when you go into the action of the button, that there's gonna be, it could be a little bit confusing sometimes if you name things differently, or if you just at one point bookmarks just gets out of control and there's a lot of bookmark and you just feel like you have to, it's hard to select the right one. So my recommendation is definitely remove the previous one, update the new one, and then don't forget to link the button action.
Great. Thank you, Chennie.
Awesome. Cool. And this is what I have for today. I think we can go into the Q&A section, I think.
Sure. Are there questions for Chennie? You can either unmute yourself or put questions in the chat. I didn't see any announcements in the chat, by the way. I checked just a moment ago.
A question in the chat. Is there a way to tell which button are using a particular bookmark?
Hi. So is there sorry, could you please repeat the question? Let me actually.
It's in the chat.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh. I'm actually having trouble bringing up the.
So it basically it's asking, is there a way to tell which button are using a particular bookmark? So like you showed the bookmark where you update or you do the updated, but if you want to know which button within the report or different pages is using a specific bookmark, is there a way, like maybe on a right click on the bookmark? I don't think there is, but see.
Right. So I currently, I don't think there is a way that tells you this. What I like to do is that I like to set the bookmark name as the button name. So whenever what button you're pressing, it should be identical to whatever bookmark you're using. And then if things help, I definitely color code my my buttons just to give me a sense of idea of which bookmark I'm using. But no, the answer to the question is no. Currently, there's no way that you can tell this. But the only way to bypass is that to name your bookmark the same name as your buttons. So when you click on that buttons, it should be identical. So for example, like let's say that if this KPI button on the bottom, and then we click on the bookmark, it should just name KPI buttons.
Yep, great, thank you. And I think that's correct. Like I don't know of anything that we could get that list.
Welcome, awesome.
Okay, we've got this one from Dorothy. Can you explain how you created the filter pane?
Yeah, awesome. So let me quickly bring this up. So let me actually close this down. So the filter panel is very easy to build. So in Power BI, if you go to visualization panel, there's actually slicer visualizations that you can use. So to kind of deconstruct this a little bit, that this is actually just a simple word where I just call it the filter panel, and I use a button here to make everything reset. And these three object right here, or three visualization here, is actually coming from the slicer visualization in the visualization panel. So on the right, let's say that if we pull in a visualization slicer, we can click on the slicer, and then we go to fields, and then we can, let's say we can put in, like, let's say for example date. We can just put in date. And as you can see, it will show us whatever date field, the date range that we can use. And you can actually customize this date range. You can set it as drop down, as this. You can set it as relative. You can save after. It really depends on your requirements. It really depends on your preference. Again, this it work with other things as well. So for example, if we open up as let's say that if we open up as location, we change this to location. And then, as you can see, it has the location again. It can do drop down and everything. Recently, Power BI actually changed this into they changed the slicer into something even more advanced. They introduced hierarchies in buttons, which is extremely awesome. I actually never played with the hierarchy, but the idea here is that if you click on this and you can put in date in it, and then it's actually you can it's amazing how you can filter out on the deepest level of your hierarchy, which is extremely cool. Again, I haven't really played too much with this. I know this is it's a pretty new features, but it's something that I know that is going to step up the slicer game for sure, because I know that this could be very useful to things like when you have a lot of slicers and you need a way to kind of condense everything, and you can use this to make sure that everything goes well and then everything gets fit in, which is pretty cool.
Oh, but just quick question. So then
Yeah.
to create the separate pane, is that just like a text box, or how do you create like a separate panel? Like the bar.
So
Yeah.
for the bar, okay, awesome. This is another illusion check. So actually this here is actually a rectangle.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so the cool thing about this, so if we copy this and then we go to a new page and then we click on this, it just feels like a background. It's I know Power
Oh.
BI doesn't have this option yet, but again, it's something that we can do. Actually, that's actually a really important things that you brought up is that when you go to the selection panel in this report right here, the order also matters. So this is kind of like arranged by top, arranged by bottom. The order of this depends on everything. So for example, that this is on the bottom. I want this to be on the bottom. This rectangle right here has to be on the bottom of the thing. So I believe what I put, I think is the image. So the DesignMind is the image. So for me, it's the shape. I put the shape on the bottom, and then whereas everything on the top, it's on top of it. So let's say that if you drag this on the top, it's gonna cover a lot of things. So very thank you for bringing this up. This is very important as well. But selection definitely matters of the layer order for sure.
Oh, okay.
But again, it's illusion. What I like to do for the top navigation, I can do this, and then I can put the logo on the top and the slicer on the top. What I really like to do in my previous design is that I like to have something like this, and then I can put the logo on the left, and then the report on the right, and then to give out a much bigger room for visualizations.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, and Olga asks, how many bookmarks are allowed in a report, and does it make the report heavy?
So that's a good question. Currently, there's no specific limitation on the bookmarks. Whether does it make the report heavy? Yes, it does, but it doesn't. It's not any significant amount, unless let's say that you are building a buttons and you are selecting that action to that button. Then yes, because in a way you are creating another object. You are specifically setting that object to that link. A way that yes, if you do a button point of way, it does make the report a little bit noticeable, but again, these notices change are not that huge. I wouldn't be too worried about it.
Okay, and Lisa asks, is the reset behind the reset button relying on a particular DAX code,
right?
or is there some default reset setting somewhere?
Awesome question. So Lisa, when we using the reset button, it's not a DAX code. It's basically when we finish our report and we brought that report to a specific default position, we can actually use we just created a bookmark for that, and then we just link that reset button to that big bookmark. But when you're creating a report and then when you're bringing it up to the default section with the default view, you can create that bookmark and then you can put that into the reset button, and then whenever you click it, it will go back to the original view. Awesome.
Okay, and Teresa is asking, if you use quite a number of interaction features, does it put a drag on the Power BI report? It's a similar question
Similar
to
question. Right.
Yeah.
So Again, Teresa, I think I answered this question back then a little bit. I don't see that big of difference. However, just a tip that when you are using VDI and then you are using interactions sometimes does put a strain on your VDI. Again, it really depends on how many visualization, how many objects that you have on the reports. But I do notice that when I'm using VDI to work on a report, things are a little bit heavy when I'm using the interactions, and things a lot more, sometimes a lot more slower. But again, that could also depends on your VDI settings or your VDI system identification and requirements and so on.
Okay, and Teresa's joining us tonight from Springfield, Missouri, by the way.
Oh, awesome! Welcome.
Yeah. Okay, next question here. From Semjana. Great presentation, lots of information and amazing knowledge shared. Thanks, Chennie. And there've been a number of other very positive comments as well. As it was in my first session, is there a way where I can get an upcoming session details? Looking forward to more such sessions. Okay, so that's really a question for me. You can email me at mark@designmind.com. and I will point you in the right direction there for any of you. And those are all the questions I see right now, unless anybody else is gonna get one in under the wire or to speak up.
Well, Mark, I can. This is Jesse Timmerman. I can throw something out that might be interesting to the heavy power users in the group, and that is when Chennie was mentioning that you can't edit the bookmarks. For those that do explore the JSON inside the file, you will be able in your layout file from the Power BI PBIX package to go to the config section, and you can access those bookmarks. There's an exploration state property, and then you'll be able to see basically what it's turning on, which visuals. You still have to reference the visuals by ID, but if you've seriously got something that would take you, I don't know, 2 hours to rebuild a state on, then it's worth the 5 minutes to go in and try to just adjust it in the layout file.
Awesome tip, Jesse. I actually did not know that you can actually use a JSON file to change a bookmark. That's a really good tip. Thank you.